there and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we are taking another trip around the globe and our first stop is America as we take a look at some more American cars. We begin with the 2019 Chevrolet Corvette ZR1 pace car, 755 horsepower, 715 foot-pound torque, 3,560 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today and the torquiest car here today. The ZR1, the long-awaited return of the ZR1 nameplate onto a Corvette, and this car is all about destroying track records, specifically those set by the ACR Viper. Conveniently, this came out just after the ACR Viper died, or got announced I should say. Yeah, it's my sort of car, this super track weapon, tons of power, it's American, and Americans do know how to build a good track car these days. ACR Viper, GT350R, so on and so forth. Americans really are building some excellent handling cars today, and well, the ZR1 looks to be just that. Also, I should note, we only have the pace car version of this in the game. We don't have the road-going version like in Horizon 4. There isn't too many difference other than the flashing lights though. As far as it goes to drive, it is a great car to drive this. It really goes around corners very well, it's very fast. It's not as good as an ACR Viper though. I much prefer the super glue grip of the ACR Viper to this. This is a little bit looser. I'm sure more people will enjoy driving this car, but in terms of destroying tracks, I would still say the ACR Viper is the king. Going back 10 years though, the ZR1 nameplate was attached to this, the 2009 Chevrolet Corvette ZR1. 638 horsepower, 604 foot-pound torque, 3,350 pounds of weight. This is of course a C6 Corvette. I do quite like the C6 Corvette. The C4 and C7 are probably my favourites, but the C6 is not too far behind, and this ZR1 definitely is a good looking car, no doubt about it. Big shouts out to the sort of Perspex screen that the bonnet has on it, so you can see the giant supercharger through the bonnet. That's a really cool touch, and this thing does sound incredible with a supercharged LS engine. Yeah, the ZR1 C6 Corvette, these cars actually usually drive pretty well. Vipers and Corvettes in general in Forza usually are pretty good driving cars, and this one is no exception. It is a great driving car, however, it doesn't feel all that modern, which I guess isn't too much of a surprise considering it is 11 years old, but you do have to bear in mind the suspension does feel a little bit soft, the tyres haven't quite got the grip that you might expect in them. It is still a very good driving car, as I said, however, those of you expecting a super sharp response like you'd even get from the ACR Viper around this time, you just won't get it. Again, ACR Viper kind of reigns supreme in my opinion when it comes to these track-focused Corvettes. Next up, we go to when America only cared about speed, the 1965 Shelby Cobra 427 SC, 425 horsepower, 500 foot-pound torque, 2,350 pounds of weight. Now, the story of the Cobra is pretty well documented. For those of you who don't know, this is essentially what happens when you try to build a sports car in the most logical way possible, which is get a incredibly light car, preferably British as this was, the ACAs, and you stick the biggest engine you could find in it, in this case a 7-litre V8 engine. As a result, you got the Cobra, and they never really addressed anything else. I'm not sure what a Cobra is like to drive in real life, however I can confirm, in Forza, it is terrifying. This thing is stupidly fast. I mean, 500 foot-pound torque in a car that weighs 2,350 pounds is insane. But as a result of that, what you essentially get is modern-day fast, but everything else is old. The suspension is wallowy and soft, it can lift occasionally. There's just no grip whatsoever. It's fun, but it is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. If you want to learn how to drive a car without traction control, there's not really much better choice than the Cobra, because the Cobra certainly teaches you wrong from right. Next up, we have the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona, 425 horsepower, 490 foot-pound torque, 3,875 pounds of weight. The NASCAR legend here, the Charger Daytona. I believe this was the first car to reach 200 miles per hour on a NASCAR track, all down to its rather strange looking aerodynamics with its cone front end and the giant wing on the back helping to keep it stable at over 200 miles an hour. Yeah, I do like the Charger Daytona. It is still one of the weirdest looking cars. I can't imagine what these things are like in person. I've never seen one, but I imagine they're massive and just incredible sights to behold. This and the Plymouth Superbird, which was essentially the same vehicle. Now, the interesting thing to note when it comes to this car is, well, all these aerodynamics are very clever, and it keeps it stable at, you know, massive speeds. This track doesn't really have massive speeds, this is a normal track, and as a result of that, what you really just end up with is a lot of extra weight, and as a result of that, I would probably recommend driving the base Charger for pretty much every occasion over the Daytona. I'm not sure if the Daytona is any better at speed, but I will say around the track the stock car is just better. It's lighter, and there's less sort of weirdness going on with the aero, because the stock car doesn't really have much aero to speak of. Next up, we have the 2013 Shelby F-150 Raptor. 575 horsepower, 592 foot-pound torque for 6,200 pounds of weight. This, perhaps unsurprisingly, is the heaviest car we have here today, and this rounds off our quadruplets of F-150s, if you will. We've had the 2011 Raptor, we've had the 2017 Raptor, and we've had the Project Scorpio Raptor. So now we've got the Shelby Raptor, which is what happens when a Raptor goes to a tuning company. Not quite as well known as the Hennessy Velociraptor, which has an awesome name, but the Shelby version is still pretty cool with its giant decals along the side of it and the big tyre in the back, and yeah, this thing is really Baja ready. If you could possibly even make a standard Raptor any more Baja ready, Shelby found a way. As far as this goes to drive, it's not awful, considering what it is. You may have known if you've seen this show before, these big American pickup trucks around the tiny Top Gear test track are something to behold. They look ridiculous in the replay camera, but driving them is truly something else, because you're miles above the road, and they are strange. Out of all the Raptors, I'd probably say this has been my favourite to drive. The normal F-150 from 2011 is a little bit too slow, and the 2017 has a little bit of a strange gearbox going on with it, so yeah, I'd probably say the Shelby Raptor is my favourite of them to drive, but it's still a sight to behold going around this track, and I don't know if I'd recommend it for much more than novelty purposes. Next up, we have the 1988 Chevrolet Monte Carlo, 180 horsepower, 225 foot-pound torque, 3,522 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today, and the least torquey car here today. Unsurprisingly, because we featured some greats from America, the Raptor, the Corvette ZR1, the Cobra, we now have to feature some not so good cars from America. And one such vehicle is the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, which is, in this game, I don't know why they added this car. They added it back in Horizon 2, I think, and we've all been sort of scratching our heads a little bit since then. It was a NASCAR at the time, but the NASCAR version wasn't a whole lot like the standard Monte Carlo, which again, 180 horsepower from a big V8 engine. Yeah, some of you might be disappointed that this isn't the donk version of the car, but there you go, this is just the standard base. Nothing to really write home about personal luxury car Monte Carlo. It does look pretty cool though, I'll give it that, and it comes in purple, which is always a bonus. As far as it goes to drive, well, it's an old American personal luxury car from when American cars were still somehow being choked by emissions regulations. It lumbers, it's bad, the gearbox is slow, and I believe it's only a 4-speed in this vehicle. It just doesn't do anything particularly well, or fast, or exciting. Yeah, no, I'd stick a NASCAR engine in that, but even still, I just probably wouldn't touch the Monte Carlo if I was you. Next up, the 1970 Chevrolet El Camino, 450 horsepower, 500 foot-pound torque, 3,820 pounds of weight. This is what happens when the Americans see an Australian ute and think, I wonder if Americans will buy that. And the answer is, they didn't really, but the El Camino is still here, and thankfully for us, Chevrolet also thought, in their infinite wisdom, while they'd provide a ute, they'd also do a very Australian thing and stick the biggest engine possible in it and make a sports variation, hence this, the SS454 version of the El Camino, which essentially has the big engine from the Chevrolet Chevelle, which is essentially the El Camino was a Chevelle with a bed on it, and I believe a little bit of extra sort of stiffness added in. As far as this goes to drive, well, it drives like a boat. You can see the way the suspension's sort of leaning and bucking. However, it is pretty quick. I can't quite remember if this is lighter than the Chevelle, but I will say it's a lot more fun than the Chevelle. When I drove the Chevelle, I was actually kind of disappointed. It didn't feel quite as quick as I expected it to. This, however, does feel quite quick. I mean, you'd expect that 450 horsepower, 500 foot-pound of torque, but yeah, no, this does feel quite quick and sprightly. Good fun. I know these things aren't particularly good when you try to turn them into track weapons. They don't take very well to tuning and driving particularly well, but if you want a car just for fun, that will certainly fulfill your niche. And finally today, the 1930 Ford Custom Hula Girl, 200 horsepower, 325 foot-pound torque, 2,480 pounds of weight. Unfortunately, we could not feature the double down Ford Custom. While I would have loved to, that vehicle is on race tyres, and unfortunately race tyres are banned from this circuit, so we can't feature the, I think it's 1,000 horsepower all-wheel drive 1932 Ford, but we can feature the Hula Girl, which is a little bit more sensible, even if it does look a little bit ridiculous. I'm not too much a fan of hot rods. I've never really spoke about hot rods too much, but these sort of cars, they don't really interest me. I've sort of said before, my opinions on cars, sort of before 1960, I'm not really that interested. And these hot rods, you know, I don't really have any nostalgia for this being English. You know, we don't really get many of these, and they just don't really tickle my pickle all that much. But either way, it is here. This one also isn't massively powerful. That doesn't help it either. But 320 foot-pound of torque is actually a pretty good number. And I have to say, overall, this is actually a very good car to drive. It might be just because I came out the El Camino and Monte Carlo, but no. The Hula Girl is actually a pretty nice car to drive. The handling is really good on this. It's got enough torque to pull it out of situations. It's not the quickest thing in the world, but again, because it's producing so much torque, it will sort of accelerate quite well. Yeah, I quite like driving the Hula Girl, it has to be said. Moving on to the times then, and well, the quickest car today, unsurprisingly, in 43rd place was the Chevrolet Corvette ZR1 pace car with 113.998. Interestingly, that is 0.6 of a second off, I believe, of the most modern ACR Viper. It is quicker than a GT2 RS, Ferrari Enzo, Lamborghini Huracan, GT3 RS, so it still did quite well considering. In 74th place, we find the Chevrolet Corvette ZR1 with 116.339, beats out the Viper from 2013. I would still probably prefer driving the Viper, but the Corvette might be slightly quicker in a straight line. Beats out Lotus 211, McLaren 570S, good time from both Corvettes there. In 140th place we find the Shelby Cobra 427, 120.704. Interestingly, it's right around where the twin mill is, which is equally as silly, but it beats out a C63S Coupe, a ZR1 Corvette C4, a 250LM, a weird part of the leaderboard, and it did weirdly well considering. Next up, in 336th place, we find the Ford Custom Hula Girl with 128.934, which is actually pretty darn good. Beats out a Lancia Stratos. In 340th place, we find the Dodge Charger Daytona with 129.053. That is about 0.5 seconds off of the standard Charger, interestingly enough. Does beat out an MX-5 Cup car and the Chrysler Valiant Charger, so it isn't the slowest Charger that we've had around. And next up, in 377th place, we find the Chevrolet El Camino 130.332. Interestingly, quicker than the standard Chevelle. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what that's about. It is quicker than a Camaro, slightly off of an Oldsmobile 442 by 1,000th of a second, which is pretty apt considering. In 401st place, we find the Shelby F150 Raptor with 131.227. Goes in between a Jaguar XJS V12 and a Volkswagen Touareg V10 diesel. Make of that what you will. It's quicker than the Raptor race truck. That's a Raptor I forgot about as well. Yeah, I can't quite remember where it is in relation to the other Raptors, but I think it's one of the quickest, if not the quickest. And finally today, in 466th place, we find the Chevrolet Monte Carlo with 139.063, filling a rather sizable gap in the leaderboard. Slightly slower than a Dodge Ram Power Wagon Datsun 2000 Roadster. Yeah, not a particularly impressive car, the Monte Carlo, it has to be said. Anyways, that was your look at some more American cars. Do hope you've enjoyed. It was fun driving some of these American cars, especially that new ZR1, because I was very interested in driving that around. So, as I said, we are going around the globe to pick up a bunch of cars that we missed on our final trek around the globe, and looking to end this series off once and for all, at least in terms of this game. So next time, we are going to be taking a look at some Australasian vehicles, so join us for that. Until then, a farewell.
Knowing just what my hopes and of ice on the slit of your father.